We tend to protect what we love. We protect what we love. Tomorrow is Memorial Day, and we will be remembering all of those who gave their lives in service to their country. They were protecting what they love. And we are grateful because in some parts of the world, we could not drive our cars into a parking lot and walk into a big, beautiful building like this and worship God the way that we are. In some parts of the world, that's against the law. And so thank God for those men and women who are serving our country and for those who have given up their lives to protect our freedoms and freedom of religion as well as all the other freedoms that we enjoy. They were protecting what we love. Yesterday, as I learned about the shootings in Santa Barbara, you may not have heard this, but there was a shooting at the University of California in Santa Barbara, and it seems to be premeditated, but it was also had an element of randomness to it. And when I read that news, I just had this protective feeling as a dad, and I just sort of held my kids just a little bit tighter, and I protect my children the best that I can because it looks to me like this world that we live in is harmful, and there are dangers in this world. And when I was a kid, we used to play out on the street, and the deal was when the street lights came on, we had to come home, but sometimes we even got to go back out after dinner and play under the street light. As long as we stayed in the light, we were okay. With my kids, I don't let them in the front yard unless I'm out there with them. They have to stay in the backyard because I want to protect my children, and we protect what we love, and we need to, and it's good to protect what we love. But sometimes protecting what we love is not only unnecessary, but it's hurtful and harmful. Years ago, when my wife and I had first gotten married, we got married in 1998, so we celebrated our 16th anniversary just recently. And in our first summer, Amy's mom came from Arkansas, and she stayed with us in our apartment, and we went to the beach to go surfing. And after we were at the beach, we went to this place on the seawall called, what was it called? I don't remember. But anyway, they have, they make calzones and pizza, and my deal was I love to get a calzone, which is, a horrible thing because it's basically your entire calorie intake in one shot. But anyway, for one day's worth of calories, you get to eat a calzone. But it's basically a medium pizza folded in half. But because it's folded in half, it looks smaller, so you eat the whole thing. Anyway, so I was enjoying my calzone. I got a calzone, and my wife and her mom, I think they got like sandwiches. And so I was eating my calzone, and my thing with calzones is that it is, the first bite is good, and all the bites in between are really good, but the very best bite of a calzone is the last bite. And that's the one it's the corner of the calzone. It's had time to soak up the tomato sauce and get just perfect. I mean, I love that last bite. And I was eating it, and I was almost done with my calzone, and I was down to my last bite, and I was chewing my second to last bite, and I sort of looked away, and my mother-in-law reached over, and she grabbed and ate my last bite. Okay, there were some words exchanged. And let me just say, she never has reached for my food again. Because I am very protective of what I love. And I was very protective of my calzone, and from then on, especially with around her, I was like this, just because I got to protect what I love. And but you can see how really that's a little ridiculous sometimes. Sometimes we get protective of what we love, and it can get a little bit ridiculous. It can get a little bit even harmful. And sometimes we are protective of what we love, and it's something that we really ought to share. I mean, sometimes we protect what we love, and it's not really something that we ought to keep others away from. It's something that we ought to share. Particularly, I think about our faith. We oftentimes are hesitant to share our faith. We're hesitant to share Jesus. And even though we know that Jesus said, go out and make disciples of all nations, sometimes we are hesitant to. And I've heard people use things, they'll say things like, well, my faith is a private faith, and I practice my faith privately. And they'll take scriptures like when Jesus said, don't pray out in the open like the Pharisees and with all these big loud prayers, but instead go into a prayer closet. But that doesn't mean don't share your faith. So I think that's a total misuse of the scripture when people say, well, I practice my faith privately. We're not supposed to practice our faith privately. We're supposed to share it. And the thing of it is that it's not because we don't love it, because I know we love it. I love my faith. You love your faith. What we believe, what we have in our heart, we hold very dearly. I remember when I was 17, I was introduced to a rock and roll band that quickly became my favorite band. They are still my favorite band. This is maybe telling you a little too much, but I listen to that band almost every day, even now. This has been 20-something years, and I'm still listening to this band. I love that band so much, but the weird thing is that I don't share it. Because one time, a long time ago, I was telling this guy that I liked that band, and he said, I went to one of their concerts once, and I slept through the whole thing. And it hurt me. And I thought, well, that's my favorite band you're talking about, and you slept through their concert? How dare you? I would have taken your ticket, And so I don't like to share it, because if I share something that I love, and somebody rejects it, or somebody criticizes it, then I would rather not have shared it. And I think that's maybe what we do with our faith too, that we don't share, we want to protect what we love, and so we don't share our faith, because if we share it, then maybe somebody will get critical, or they'll treat us differently, or they'll talk to us differently. It's the same thing with politics. Sometimes people don't share what they believe politically, because for fear that somebody would typecast them as this way or that way. And so there's that rule that's been developed. Never talk about religion or politics. And but the truth of the matter is, Jesus wants us to talk about our religion. He doesn't want us to keep it to ourselves. Sometimes we protect what we love, and it is not good. So we find in this passage of Scripture that it says, one day some parents brought their children to Jesus so he could lay his hands on them and pray for them. And so I don't know the whole story. I don't know all of the details, but if I just sort of think about that, I can imagine that there are parents who hear about the ministry of Jesus. They hear that this man is a miracle worker. And so maybe some of these parents are bringing their children because their children have physical needs that need healing. Or maybe they want him to pray a prayer of blessing because they want them to have some protection on their children. Maybe they want to bring their children to Jesus because they want their children to have a chance to meet this amazing rabbi who's traveling around Israel. And so I imagine that people have brought their children from miles and miles and miles away. They've walked for maybe days to get to where Jesus is. And so they're bringing their children to meet Jesus and to encounter Jesus. And when they get there, what happens is that it says, but the disciples scolded the parents for bothering him. The disciples scolded the parents for bothering Jesus. The disciples loved Jesus. They loved him. They were with him through his entire ministry. They were with him when he broke the bread and he lifted it to heaven and it fed 5,000 people. They were with him when he healed people miraculously, causing people who were once not able to walk. They watched him as he put mud on a man's eyes and he was able to see. And they loved Jesus, but they felt in this moment, for whatever reason, that they needed to protect him from being bothered. Maybe he had been healing people and talking with people all day, and maybe they knew he was getting hungry and tired, and they were trying to protect him. Maybe they thought that, he cannot be bothered by one more person today. Maybe they thought, I don't know, but maybe there was a whole line of people, and they thought, these people were here first. He needs to serve them first, and then he can serve you. I don't know, but what they protected Jesus because they loved him, I think, and they blocked these children from meeting Jesus. They were not willing to share Jesus. And Jesus said, "Let the children come to me. Don't stop them. For the kingdom of heaven belongs to those who are like these children." He did not want the disciples to protect him. He did not want them to keep these children out. He wanted those children to be able to come to where he is so that he could bless them. And so he says, don't keep the children from me. Let the children come to me. And in fact, these children have a better handle on the faith than you do, because these children are not afraid to share what excites them. Children are not afraid to receive the grace of God and to proclaim it. I've heard kids share Jesus more often and more effectively than most adults. When a kid loves something, when a kid is excited about something, they don't hold it back. They just share it. Have you seen that? Have you seen the way children do that? They're perfectly willing to say, "I love Jesus," and you should too, because he loves you. And so Jesus says, "Don't stop the children from coming to me." And so they come to him, and he placed his hands on their heads, and he blessed them before he left. Sometimes we protect what we love, but in doing that, we kind of take on a posture of a fist. And what Jesus wants us to do is to shift from the posture of a fist to an open hand. He wants us to not be keeping things away from him, but he wants us to be welcoming. He wants us to shift from protection to hospitality. And when we are hospitable and when we let people come to Jesus, when we don't do anything to stop people from coming to Jesus, then Jesus can bless them and the world gets to be different. Every year for about the last 5 years, I have, in the month of May, well, usually like the end of April, beginning of May, sometime after Easter, whenever Easter is, I like to take a trip down to South Padre Island to do sermon planning. And so I'll take my RV and I'll check into an RV park there near the beach, and they have free Wi-Fi, so I can eat, I can do all the things I need to do in terms of research, and I'll plan out sermons. And so I did that this year I think it was my 5th year to do it. And but this year I took Amy with me, which was really fun. And so we went down there and we camped for a week. And usually what I'll end up doing is I'll go surf in the morning, and then I'll go back to the camper, and I'll just spend most of the day planning. And sometimes I'll do some reading for study. And then at the end of the day, I'll go back out and I'll surf again. And this year, so we went down there, and one of the things that's really interesting is that I keep seeing the same people every year, because what I did not know until this year is that South Padre Island is the kiteboarding capital of the planet. Did you know that South Padre Island in Texas is the #1 destination spot for kiteboarding? Do you know what kiteboarding is? It's kind of like it's sort of like a wakeboard, and you stand on that, and you have this massive kite that looks like a parachute, and you hold on to that kite, and it just slings you through the water, kind of like windsurfing, but the kite is way up in the air. And it's extremely dangerous, it looks to me, because you're tied to that kite, and so if you get kind of thrown off, you could be, you might fly to Austin. And so anyway, the kiteboarders are down there every year, and I've actually begun to build relationships with some of these kiteboarders, because they're just, we're kind of part of the same tribe because I'm a surfer. So anyway, one morning I went out surfing, and I was surfing, and the water there this time was crystal clear. It was amazing. I mean, it's nothing like Galveston. It was crystal clear. You could see the sand. And I would be riding a wave, and I could see the sunlight just dancing on the ground underneath me. And I saw a turtle while I was riding a wave. I saw a stingray, and then I saw this shark. And I think it was the same shark every time because it was right around in the same area. But I one morning I surfed and I saw the shark, and then I saw it again, and I saw it again, and it started to get me a little worried. So I went in, and I was walking back to where Amy was, and there was a kiteboarder there, and he said, "Hey, it looks like you're having fun out there." And I said, "Yeah, except for my little friend in the gray suit." And he said, "Oh, well, that's not fun." And so we talked about sharks a little bit. But the conversation kind of drifted around to kiteboarding. And he started telling me about kiteboarding. And he started just sharing his enthusiasm for kiteboarding and how much he loved kiteboarding, how kiteboarding was like the joy of his life. And he started engaging me in conversation about kiteboarding and asked, "Have you ever kiteboarded?" And "No, I've never kiteboarded." And he says, "Have you ever thought about it?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I mean, it looks pretty cool. It's the kind of thing that I'm surprised I haven't done yet." And he said, "Oh, man, it's the best." And he just started telling me all this stuff about kiteboarding. And then he said, "You know what? We're going down to this place on the island over here. It's down at the end of the road. We're going down there this afternoon. You should come, and I'll show you a few things. I have a little trainer kite, and you can try it out." And I thought, well, that's really nice, So that afternoon, Amy and I went down there, and so he invited us. He introduced us to all of his friends that were down there, and so we got kind of included in their little circle. And he got out this little kite, and I was flying it, and he was showing me these things about how it would relate to kiteboarding. And I left there, and I said to Amy, "I think I just met a kiteboarding evangelist," because he was sharing something that he loved. I mean, that was so hospitable of him to invite us here. And, I think he is. He's a kiteboarding evangelist. But, Matt, the kiteboarding evangelist, he has a way of imparting his enthusiasm and his love for this sport in a way that draws people in. And he could be protective of it. I mean, he could say, "Oh, I'm not going to share this. There are enough kiteboarders in the world right now. We do not need another kiteboarder." He could do that. He could say, "Well, I don't want to introduce this guy to kiteboarding because what if he doesn't like it, or what if he rejects it?" Or he could have done that, but instead he didn't. Now he's a kiteboarding evangelist who has not gone door to door knocking on every door in his neighborhood. "Have you ever tried kiteboarding? May I introduce you to kiteboarding?" He hasn't done that. "Hey, let me tell you the 4 spiritual laws of kiteboarding." He doesn't do that. And I don't think that he has to, because what he does is he builds relationships. And I don't even think he thinks about it. He and I were just kind of talking, and it just, because it's who he is and it's in his heart, he started sharing that. I think the same thing can be true for you and me. The same thing can happen for you and me, that we can share Jesus too. And the mission of the church, the mission that we have embraced as a church, is that we are about the making of new disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. And a couple weeks ago we talked about that means that we go out and we find people who are not part of the community of faith, and we bring them in and we include them in the community of faith, and we teach people to obey everything that Jesus commanded. And we believe as a church that is exactly what God has put this church right here at 1062 Fairmont Parkway to do. Because we believe as a church that there are a lot of people that are living in the Pasadena area who do not know that they are loved by God. We understand that we are children of God. We are people who have somehow have made it to Jesus, and he has blessed us, and now he's sending us out. And so we who know the love of God are called to share that love of God with other people. The vision statement that I have read before to you has this one part in it that I think is so good. It says, "We believe too many of the young people in today's world are growing up without the knowledge that they are deeply loved by God. As beloved children of God, we seek to be agents of God's love in our community and a source of nurture and support for children and families in the Pasadena area who are searching for significance in this life. We know that we are loved by God, And we know that Jesus wants us to share our faith. And so we as a community are about that. That's what we want to be about. I want to share with you some of the ways that we intend to do this. We have begun by just saying, okay, we're going to focus, because we believe God is asking us to, we are going to focus on children and families in the Pasadena area. That's going to be our missional focus. And that does not mean that we will no longer have ministries with people who are not children and families. I want you to hear that. We will not do anything to diminish the ministries that we have and that we've currently been doing for people who are not children and not part of families or have, you know what I'm saying. But that it will be our missional focus as we look out beyond the church walls. Where are we focusing? And as we do that, children are going to come. They are going to come into our church building. And they have already begun to come into our church building. They have already started. We developed a Sunday school program a year ago, last summer, called The Way of the Child. We started out actually with one class, and it grew to 2 classes. And now we have so many kids that we need to have 3 classes, but we're actually planning on more growth, because as we pursue this vision, we believe we're going to need even more classes. And so next fall, we intend to have, help me if I'm getting this wrong, but 3 classes that are for grades 1 through 4, and 1 class that is for 5th and 6th graders at the 9:45 hour. And then at the 11 o'clock hour, we want to have 1 class for 1st through 4th and 1 class for 5th through 6th. We also want to continue the Way of the Child approach in 7th and 8th grade, and also 9th through 12th. And so, because what we're seeing is that when kids come to the Way of the Child, they don't want to go to any other church. In fact, I've even started saying to parents, let me warn you, if you come, they're not going to want to go anywhere else. Okay, so please be careful. If you bring your children to Way of the Child, this could be it, you know. This is what I'm saying to guests and people that I meet. And I like saying that because I'm being a little, cheeky. But so the Sunday school program is a huge part of what we want to do. And this is a way for us to share Jesus. This is a way for us to be hospitable, because this is a way to say, yes, we want you here. We have a place for you. We also have been very intentional in our worship planning, that in the year to come, our worship series will be very intentionally and strategically focused on the needs of people. What do people need? So often we've preached sermons and we've done series that are interesting. They're intellectually maybe a little bit entertaining. They give you a lot of nice biblical knowledge. But we want, and hopefully that does relate to our life, but instead we've taken an approach where we're focusing on the needs of the community, so that when people come, what they receive is something that makes a difference in their life. One of the things that we're going to do is we are going to be moving the contemporary service from the CLC into this room. We believe that this is a much more worshipful space than the CLC, that when you walk into this room, you automatically just immediately experience the presence of God. And we want that in all of our worship services. And so we are planning on doing that, because this is a way for us to share Jesus. It's a way for us to be hospitable to our mission field. All of these things are things that we believe that God wants for this church. When we do this, it's gonna cause us to have to say, I'm not going to protect. I'm going to be hospitable. Because there is within us this desire to protect what we love. But in order to be missional, in order to really share Jesus, we are going to have to be hospitable. We're going to have to receive people with open arms. The disciples wanted to keep people from meeting Jesus because they wanted to protect what they love. They weren't willing to share Jesus. But Jesus said, Let the children come. Let them come to me. Don't do anything to stop them. Amen.